Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it's in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Greetings everyone, welcome to Capital University webinar workshop entitled Literacy on Sensual Related Crimes. So in relation to the 50th founding anniversary of Capital University, together with the celebration of Women's Month, just would like to leave a simple quote by Malala Fund. I want every girl to know that her voice can change the world. So we acknowledge the presence of our university president, Dr. Attorney Casimiro Juarez Jr. Together with him is our executive vice president, Dr. Fe Juarez. Also, our vice president for administration, Dr. Franco Flores. And together with him is our vice president for academic affairs, Dr. Amor Q. De Torres. Also, we would like to acknowledge the presence of our deans from the different colleges and the department heads and staff for all with all the departments from Capital University and our students together with other schools who are viewing our live streaming today. So to formally start, may we welcome Ms. Charles Ann Ponce to introduce our guest of honor and speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our beloved and respected President, Attorney Casimiro B. Juarez Jr., to our Executive Vice President, Dr. Fe R. Juarez, to our Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Amor Q. De Torres, to our Vice President for Administration, Dr. Franco B. Flores. Once again, good morning to our deans, faculty and staff, to our students and various organizations who are viewing our live stream. Good morning. It is my privilege and honor to introduce to you our speaker for this morning. She is currently the Clerk of Court of the Regional Trial Branch 17. She is the former Court Attorney 4 of the Court of Appeals under the direct supervision of Justice Ronaldo Martin. She took and finished her Bachelor of Arts, major in Political Science at MSU IIT last 2011. She finished her Bachelor of Laws at Liceo de Cagayan University last March 2016, and she took her exam review class at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and took last May 2017. And currently, she is taking up Masters of Law at San Beda University, College of Law, Master's Program. Please help me welcome Attorney Florence Lagcao.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's session. Thank you, Ma'am Ponce. Before I proceed formally with my talk, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Attorney Casimiro Juarez. Good morning, sir. Executive Vice President Dr. Fe Juarez. Vice President for Administration, Dr. Franco Flores, Vice President for Administration, Dr. Franco Flores, Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Amor Q. De Torres, and Deans, Heads, most especially to my beloved Dean from College of Criminology, Ma'am Dean Bacas. Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful Saturday morning, and today we will be discussing rape. I'm sure that this is not an alien term to all of you. I'm sure that you've heard it somewhere over the news. I'm sure that you've heard it, you've seen it, you've read it over Facebook. But for me to formally start this talk, allow me to bring you back to ancient Rome. In ancient Rome, rape was only a crime against a virgin daughter. So let me just for a while present to you my presentation. So in ancient Rome, rape was only a crime against a virgin daughter of a tax-paying citizen because the daughter is considered as her father's personal property. And in this crime of rape, it is not the daughter who is aggrieved or the offended party, but it is actually the father. So during ancient Rome times, um, you can only file a case for rape. Number one, if the victim is a virgin. Number two, if she is a daughter of a tax-paying citizen. If you're not virgin, or if your father is not paying taxes, and you're raped, then there is no law available for you, right? So, and also, it is not the daughter's right, it is not the victim's right to file the case. It is the father's right. And the rationale behind it is because it is only the father who can file the case of rape because his property, aka daughter's value was depreciated by the reason of rape. So that is how rape is million years ago. But of course, society has evolved and better laws were created. But the question is, did laws really become better? Were we able really to evolve? Were our laws really adaptive to the current situation? So, in ancient Rome, let me bring you back to the Philippines and tell you a story of a little girl named Rosario. So on October 10, let me just tell you a little bit of a story so that you can relate to every topics that we will be discussing as we move on with the discussion. So one night, about midnight, on October 10, 1986, a foreigner named Stefan Ritter brought a boy and a girl named Jesse and Rosario inside a hotel, right? And these two children were chosen among a bunch of street children who are offering themselves for sex for money, right? So the two were told to take a bath, right? So you go there, you take a bath, and the first one who took the bath was Rosario. So she's the little girl, okay? So while Rosario Baluyot was inside the bathroom, the foreigner Ritter asked the little boy Jesse to put to lay himself on the bed, right? And while Rosario was inside the bathroom, accused Ritter, the foreigner, took out some pictures depicting dressed up young boys, right? And he put it in on top of a table, and then he asked Jesse to replicate it. So he asked Jesse to do the same thing. So one of these objects the accused Ritter played was his hands over his palm, and the foreigner was asking the little boy to touch his sex organ, his penis, right? And while the little boy was touching his penis, the foreigner was at the same time doing oral job to the little boy. When they were done, it was Rosario's time to perform the sexual act. And when they performed the sexual act, the foreigner had a hard time inserting his sexual organ to the little girl. There was really struggle on the part of the little girl. And so what he did was that he inserted at that time an unknown object to the sexual organ of the little girl. And then the night ended with him paying these two kids 200 pesos each. Right. A day after that, the little girl was already complaining because her tummy was extremely painful. And to cut the story short, they found a vibrator, a sexual tool, a sexual tool that is used by an adult in sexual intercourse. So this vibrator was found inside the vagina of the little girl Rosario, and it stayed there for almost 2 weeks, and it already created tissues inside her vagina. It was horrible act committed. But the foreigner, Ritter, was never persecuted. He ran out of it free. He was not put into prison. The resounding question then is, why was he not put in prison? Why was he not placed behind the bars, despite the very horrible thing that he did to the two minors, most especially to Rosario? Because after few months from that scenario, Rosario, the little girl, died. The Supreme Court, the Supreme Court itself of the Philippines, decided that Ritter, the foreigner, was not guilty because, number one, they were not able to establish that the little girl Rosario is less than 12 years old, or 12 years old less than, right, or younger. And also that there was no kind of rape at that time where you insert an object inside the vagina of a woman. That was Philippines 1986, or 20 years ago. And that is how bad our country, that is how bad the laws are with respect to protecting rape victims. Now, on to my next slide, you will see that the sexual violence did not stop with Rosario. In Philippines, one person is raped every hour. Last 2020, there was a 20% surge in domestic violence as victims remained trapped at home with their abuser. So you already know what happened to 2020 when there was COVID. So it was COVID, everybody was just inside their house. 20% increase in domestic violence, including women and child rape. Cases of child sex abuse have been tripled times 3 during COVID-19. And 1 in every 10 women experience sexual violence. 60% of rape victims don't acknowledge that they have been raped. And yet, amidst these statistics, these glaring, horrible statistics that we have of how bad rape is in our country, in the midst of these statistics, the victims and not the perpetrators are still primarily blamed for the crime committed against them. Okay? This figure could be just a fraction of the many victims of rape who are incapacitated to speak. Many cases are unreported. Victims would not want to go to the police and tell the police, hey, I was raped. Someone did sexual intercourse with me without my consent. That is largely due to shame and fear. Not only with the perpetrator, not only with the offender, but of how society will view them as survivors, and of the uncertainty of whether justice will be served or whether they will just be judged. So the next question is then, why? Rape is a traumatic experience. It can cause a lot of distress. It can cause a lot of negative psychological effects. But why is it so difficult to come out? Why is it so difficult to come forward? Why is it so difficult to be strong for yourself and just defend yourself, go to the police and ask for protection? Why is that? The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is found on your next slide. This is one of the many reasons, problematic reasons that we have in our society. The words you see on your screen right now are the exact questions. Let me just quote it. Quote it. Nasarapan ka ba? What were you wearing? Why did you not shout? Why did you not run away? Or how much did you drink? These are the words that are in reality. These are not made up. These are not from movies. These are realities. These are the questions that are being propounded by investigating officers themselves, by the policeman themselves, when victims decide to come out and report. These questions are not welcoming. These questions are sending a message that it's your fault. Why are you wearing that one? Why did you not run? Why did you drink with boys? These are common scenarios. These are common remarks. I do not want to sit here and be hypocrite and say, I did not say any of that, because I did. At some point in my life, I may have been biased. I may have been unfair, and I was able to throw those remarks. So the goal in this morning's discussion is for all of us, including me, to learn something from the discussion, and let us turn ourselves into a work in progress as we try to improve the condition of the mentality against rape victims. On to my next slide. This is worst. You will see the questions propounded by the court themselves. Some of the in our country, we have a family court that is really designed, is created to handle cases of sensitivity, like this one, like rape, for example, wherein the judge and the social worker are fully trained to handle situations. But in reality, we do not have family courts in our entire entire country. Not all provinces, not all municipalities have family courts. Not all courts in the Philippines have gender sensitive judges. So these questions on your screen right now are the exact questions propounded by court during a direct examination to a 12 to a minor, to a child. Can you estimate the length of it? Did you see his penis? Did you enjoy it? Did you voluntarily spread your legs? Do you swear before God? God will be mad at you if you lie. This is the reality. And this is what we are trying to do one step at a time to eradicate this mentality, because you cannot just say, oh, the professional, those who have earned higher education do not have these biases. The biases are only for those uneducated, illiterate, those who have not gone through education. Wrong. Even the most elite, most professional people have biases, have their own personal bias, which is shameful on our part. And this is what we are continuously doing. We work in progress. Many cases still go unreported, largely due to shame and fear. Not only because of the perpetrator, but most likely, studies shows that rape victims are afraid of how society will view them as rape victims, as survivors. Okay? So the goal for this morning's discussion is, number one, we understand rape in its legal concept. We learn its elements. We learn how a particular act is considered rape. But we do not stop from there. Second, we will evaluate ourselves. Okay, so as we go along with the discussion this morning, there will be difficulties in assessing our own self, because we will be asking ourselves difficult questions. Am I biased? Do I have this stigma? And please be very honest, because I myself is trying to be very honest in admitting that it's not all the time that I am straightforward in my judgments. Okay? And the third goal is for us to answer the question, am I helping or am I just adding up to the trauma? Okay, on to my next slide. This is what is the definition of rape in our country. As we try to understand rape, let us familiarize ourselves with these words. These words shown onto the next slide will tell you the elements of rape. Next slide, please. Namel? We try to discuss the elements of rape. All right? So, question, very common question. How do we commit rape? Please don't commit rape, but this is for the purposes of discussion. So, there can be rape if generally, okay, in its general context of rape, there can be rape when a man will have a sexual intercourse, or in legal term, we call it carnal knowledge. Okay? So carnal knowledge is the legal term for sexual intercourse. So a man has a sexual intercourse with a woman, and it was made through force, it was made through threat, it was made through intimidation, and or the woman was deprived of reason, or she was unconscious, or there was a fraudulent machinations, or that the victim is under 12 years old. Okay, that's the general definition of rape. Now, how do I best explain this? Let me introduce a girl named Daisy. So, when Daisy was a student at a university, she was dating this fellow senior, tall, dark, handsome. Okay? He was very handsome. He's a varsity basketball player. He stands 6 feet. He's very good looking, chilled muscles and all of that. So she fell in love. DC was a simple girl coming from a province, and she fell in love right away to that very gorgeous man. Let's call that man Louis, right? That man was very handsome, was very popular in school. So it's obvious, it's given that DC instantly fell in love with Louis. But they entered into the relationship. She made sure that she placed in her boundaries. So Daisy told Louis, "Do not touch anything below my waist." One night, Daisy felt his fingers going into her panties. She said no. She yelled stop, and she tried to break away from him. But he was much stronger. He's a 6 feet tall guy. She was raped. Louis was suc- Louis successfully penetrated her. Question: did they have carnal knowledge? Yes. So they had sexual intercourse. Was it done through force or threat? It was done through force because Louis was stronger apparently to a 4'11 DC. Was it, can you say that there was rape? The answer is yes. Ma'am, why is rape committed when they are boyfriends and girlfriends? Can you say that no rape happened because the resistance on the part of Faith is not enough? Or maybe let's just assume that she also likes it. The answer, the supposed and the ideal answer should be that there is rape there through force. Daisy was forced into performing sexual intercourse with Louis. And that was made without informed, knowledgeable consent. It was not made through consent. It was made through force. You have to understand that sometimes you cannot just say na, she could have fight back. She could have kicked him. She could have grabbed something, she could have grabbed something and then just hit him in the head. You cannot say that. As long as there is no consent on the part of the victim, that is rape. You have to understand that sometimes people react simply by freezing. You cannot really directly react. Your brain goes into an autopilot in order to protect you in the least way that it possibly can. So there is rape because, number one, there is carnal knowledge. There was sexual intercourse between Louis and Daisy. And that was made through force. Okay? But I'd like to include that, I'd like to highlight that if, aside from the fact that it was made through force, the act was made without the consent of Daisy. Okay? No one should judge a person over how you behave when you are sexually assaulted. So, in this scenario, there is only one magic word: consent. So, when you look into a situation, when you try to assess a situation, whether or not there is rape through force, you look into whether the victim was overpowered by the force employed, used by the perpetrator. Okay? That's rape through force. But do not forget to answer, do not forget to ask yourself, aside from force, was there also consent on the part of the victim? Okay? So long as there is no knowledgeable and informed consent, it's equivalent to rape. Let us continue dwelling with the life of Daisy. So that's all. What I have discussed a while ago is rape through force. Now, when Daisy turned 24, she met a man. She met another man. She thought that this guy was the love of her life. He was drop dead gorgeous. He was very handsome as well. Let's name him Carl. Carl was 32. He was divorced. He had bachelor's degree from Harvard University in accounting. He had fought for our country as a reserved army. Daisy felt head over heels in love with Carl. So they were together for a year and a half. They kissed, they hugged, they had sex. Already talking about marriage. One night, Carl just randomly called Daisy and said, "Honey, I have to tell you something." "What is it, honey?" "Honey, I am married." Not only that, he was 26 and not 32. He didn't have a bachelor's degree in accounting in Harvard University. In fact, he was a high school dropout. And he have not fought in any war involving our country. In fact, he was trying to avoid the law enforcers. In the numerous times that Daisy and Carl had sex, was there a rape? The answer should be yes. This is the kind of rape that is committed through fraudulent machinations. So this is onto the one, two, three, four, five, sixth word found on your screen. This is rape by means of fraud. He was defrauded. No, Daisy was defrauded into doing something without her knowledge. And you may say that, that's not rape because at the time that they had sex, Daisy gave her consent. But the question is, was that consent knowledgeable and informed consent? Was she really informed? If Daisy was informed that Carl was a high school dropout, 26 years old and married, will she engage into a relationship in the first place? I guess the answer is no. So rape is committed through fraudulent machinations. Carl here was fraudulent, deceiving Daisy into the relationship so he could perform sexual intercourse with her. That's rape through fraud. Okay? Now let's go to the second second word found on your screen, rape committed through threat. So let's move on with Daisy. Let's now go to Mr. Salvador. So Mr. Salvador was a very powerful producer. And when he exposed himself and demanded sexual favors, the people who preyed on, so they were concerned about their careers and they were in fear of what he could do to eliminate their career. And this is very rampant. This is very prevalent in showbiz industries, for examples, or modeling industries, for example, wherein there's this one person, very powerful producers, who gets to decide who comes out in the stage and who gets to stay backstage. So he's very powerful. And he would make use of this power to threaten these girls into inducing them into engaging sex through fear. And that the person is not freely giving their agreement, but because out of threat, they get into it. They do it. That's rape through threat. Okay? Now, let's move on to rape committed when the woman is deprived of reason or is unconscious. So this is very common when the woman is intoxicated, meaning that the woman is drunk. Yes, that could be committed through rape committed when the woman is unconscious or deprived of reason. Okay? I will reserve the last word, which is when rape is committed under 12 years old, because I will be discussing the distinctions between a traditional rape and a um, sexual assault rape. Okay? Now, we check the status quo, and let me check to you the next slide. So, we have in the Philippines, we have two kinds of rape. We have the traditional rape, and we also have the rape committed through sexual assault. So, what I discussed earlier involving Daisy and Louis, Daisy and Carl, Mr. Salvador, or when a woman is drunk, these four instances are under this kind of rape, traditional rape. So, the offender here is always a male. So it's always the maginoo who is the victim in this kind of rape, because the victim here is always a female. Okay? And it is committed through penile penetration of the vagina. So in this kind of rape, this is the original, this is the traditional kind of rape wherein a man forcefully inserts his penis down to the vagina of a woman. All right? On to my next slide. We have the second type of rape, which is rape by sexual assault. Here, the offender could be male or female. Let me just again repeat that. The offender may be male or female. So, yes, a woman could also be a rapist. Okay? And the victim may be a male or a female. So, yes, a man could be raped as well. Question. Glaring questions I can probably see in your face right now is how? How can a woman be a rapist? And how can a man be the victim? So this is committed by inserting penis into another's mouth or anal orifice. Okay? So when you say penis is inserted to the mouth or to the anal, that means that the victim could be a woman, because a woman has a mouth as well. So a man could insert his penis into the mouth of the woman, and that's rape by sexual assault. Or it could be that the man forcefully entered his penis into the mouth of another man, then that's rape by sexual assault as well. Okay? Or anal orifice, through anal. Or, there's another or, any instrument or object into the genital or anal orifice of another person. Meaning, it could be any object that you enter into the genital or to the anal orifice of another person. So it could be this ball pen entered into the anal orifice of another person or to the genital of a woman. That is rape by sexual assault, right? Also, another thing that I have to discuss is that, onto my next slide, is that there is no need for us to actually prove full penetration. So if your question is, ma'am, do I need to insert fully my penis into her vagina in order for it to be rape? I will not be guilty of rape, ma'am, because my penis only touched her vagina and I was not really able to fully penetrate the woman. The answer is no. The mere fact that the penis touches any part of the labia majora or labia minora, the crime of rape is already consummated. Okay? So there's already rape in that. As soon as the penis touches the labia majora or labia minora. I could have like inserted a photo here of labia minora and labia majora, but that might shock you, right? And that might put me into trouble. So I did not put any picture of that. But in layman's term, labia majora and labia minora is just really the, I don't want to say it really, but it's just the part of the vagina, the opening part, the surface of vagina that is being touched by the penis. So these quote unquote words in your screen right now, these are decisions of the Supreme Court. So the mere fact that the penis touches any part of the labia majora or labia minora, the crime of rape is already consummated. When you say consummated, he is now guilty of rape. He can now be put into trial for committing the crime. Okay? The presence or absence of a broken hymen is not material in the crime of rape. Remember that when you try to examine a particular circumstance, and if you want to determine if something, if rape happened, you only look into the elements. One, was there sexual intercourse? Two, was the sexual intercourse committed through force, threat, intimidation, or was the woman deprived of reason or unconscious? Or if the offended party is under 12 years old or is demented or buang. Okay? So, you don't need to check whether or not the hymen of the victim is broken. You do not have to ask whether or not the woman is a party girl who goes out every night. You don't have to check into the morality of the victim to see if rape really is committed. These are immaterial matters. You stick to the elements. You go back to the elements. If there was sexual intercourse made through force, threat, intimidation, or the woman was deprived of reason, or the victim is 12 years old or below, automatic that's rape. You do not need to ask so many questions. Ideally. Because in reality, we are surrounded by a lot of biases. Kasi yung babaeng yan, party girl. or she wears miniskirt, or she's drunk, or she's the kind of woman who engages into a lot of sexual activity. Okay? So later on, I will be highlighting the fact that aside from the elements provided by the law, there is also a need to include consent. But that will be later on. As we move on with onto the challenges that is present in our society, let me just play a little bit of a game. Onto the next slide. Okay, so in celebration of Women's Month, and as the College of Criminology, Capital University celebrates along with Capital University in celebrating Women's Month, I have here 3 games. And the winner of these 3 questions will get a gift certificate from Van Depp. I'm sure that every one of you is familiar with Van Depp, the pastel. So they will be giving a gift certificate of Van Depp. I will be delivering the gift certificate to the criminology department on Monday afternoon, so you can claim it on Tuesday. So um I have here icons. And all you have to do is guess what movie is this. These are the movies that highlights women empowerment. This particular movie is about a woman who break through the stereotypes and entered law school, joined the group of men into legal world. Despite her being very fancy and girly, she joined the legal world. So this is a movie, a 2001 movie that is starred by Reese Witherspoon. So what movie is this? All you have to do is put into the comment section your answer, and the one who first gets the right answer will have the gift certificate. So I will have to ask L, Mom L's assistance in making sure that we get the right name. Okay, so this is a 2001 movie. This is starred by actress Reese Witherspoon. Please don't be shy. This is just a icebreaker. So who gets to answer first gets the gift certificate. If there's any who's answering, what title of the movie? All right. We are trying to. So you have here 2 icons, and you have to
Okay.
guess. Do we have a winner?
Let me read some comments here po, attorney. We have
Yes,
from
thank you.
Seth Linog. He answers salt po.
Wrong.
We have from JD Dahao, Legally Blonde.
Correct. That's the
Oh,
correct
okay.
answer. On to the next
So the
slide,
winner.
we have Legally Blonde. So JD Daha will have his gift certificate from Van Depp on Tuesday. Claim it to the CU department of, I'm sorry, criminology department. Next slide. This one is a 2013 Disney movie. This made us realize that it's not all the time that man saves the woman. Okay? So it's sometimes your sister, it's sometimes your best friend, or it could be anyone other than man. So a woman
Um,
need no saving from men. So that's the message of this Disney movie, that a woman do not really need any saving from any man. All right? Do we have a winner?
Let me read some comments here, attorney, from CZ Rizalin Hibulan. I think it's just a typo, but her answer is Frozen.
Correct. The answer is actually Frozen. So in this movie, the sister Elsa actually was saved by her younger sister and not by the love of her life. Next slide, please. This one is a Tagalog movie, 1998 Filipino movie starring Vilma Santos, wherein she depicted the role of a woman as a mother, as a partner, and I think that that's one of the most empowering movies that we had for so long because it gives us the idea of how woman is in domestic scenarios. All right, what movie is that? I'm not sure if I'm not sure if
There's an answers already, attorney.
yes.
First is Ryan J. Tandehon. His
Mhm.
answer is anak.
Wrong. Sorry.
We have another one, Rickson Bacaro Agsito.
Yes.
This is Leia's story.
Wrong.
Wrong yapon siya. We have Raymond L. Casol,
Uh-huh.
Brave.
Wrong. Actually, if you look into the icon, it's very just it's
We
very
have another
literal.
one, attorney po.
Yes. Yes.
From Hero Savior, The Lucky Ones.
Wrong. It's a Filipino movie, 1998, starred by Vilma Santos.
Ma'am, naka-unmute ba ako, ma'am ha? That was heard.
What is that? 1998 Filipino movie depicting, let me just check if it's really a 1998 movie.
We have another answer from Raquel
Sige.
Bernasor Lapad. Bata-bata, paano ka ginawa?
Very good. That's bata-bata, paano ka ginawa? Actually, literal kaya ang icon. Alright, so congratulations for our winners for this morning's icebreaker. And you may claim your gift certificate to College of Criminology, Capital University Department. Alright? These are movies that highlights women empowerment and tells us that you're not just a woman, you're not just an object, but you can be so much more than that. All right, so we move on. We proceed with our discussion. Now, on to my next slide, please. Now, we have already set into place the discussion of the elements of rape. So again, as I repeat, there is rape when there is a sexual intercourse, there's carnal knowledge between man and a woman, and it was made through force, threat, or intimidation. And when the offended party is deprived of reason or is unconscious, or when there is fraudulent machinations. If you are confused with all the elements, I suggest that you remember Daisy and how she was forced to have sex with a guy named Louis. Or if you are still confused, you remember Daisy and how she was defrauded by a guy named Carl when Carl is married. Or when you're still confused, you think of Mr. Salvador, the producer, who lures women into engaging sex with him. And all other elements, such as when the woman is drunk, or the woman is unconscious, or there is intimidation. Or if the victim is 12 years old or below, then there is automatic rape there. All you have to prove is that there was a sexual intercourse that happened with a 12-year-old. Okay? Remember that Rosario Daluyot, the little girl we talked at the beginning of this session, her abuser was not put into prison because at that time they were not able to establish that Rosario was 12 years old. And so if you are 13 years old and you are raped, you still have to prove that you were raped. Okay? And the statistics would show that the Philippines has the lowest statutory rape age of consent with statutory rape. That means that in other countries, it's at least 14 years old or 16 years old. That is, if a woman is raped and her age is 14 years old, 16 years old or below, then that is rape already. But in the Philippines, we have very low statutory rape age for statutory rape. Now we go to the challenges. Why are we facing these problems repeatedly? What is the challenge? What is the problem in the society? What is wrong with us? Okay? So on to my next slide. We have what we call as victim blaming mentality. And are you guilty of this? Do you also blame the victim? In 2000, I'm sorry, in January this year, aside from the reports of COVID, we were all shocked with Christine Dacera's rape incident. It was all over the news. Everybody was trying to comment on it. Everybody has their theories. The police, Philippine National Police, already concluded as early as a day after the incident that there was rape. Everybody has a say on it. But whether or not Christine Dacera was really raped, or whether or not she died out of a neurotic aortic aneurysm, whether or not Christine Dacera was drugged, we really do not know. We do not have the evidences. We do not have the trial. But what is alarming, when the news about Christine Dacera was all over, was how people was reacting, was how Filipinos were reacting. Honestly, it was shameful. From January until the news about Christine Dacera was still fresh. When you check Facebook, when you open your Facebook, when you open your Twitter, when you open social media accounts, you see people telling that, quote unquote, let me just quote unquote in Bisaya, ay, atan man puday kaayo, quote unquote, ay, sa CCTV, grabe man puday kaayo ka, party girl, quote unquote, grabe man pud ka sexy, quote unquote, laki man pud na niyang kauban, quote unquote, bahala pa og bayot na, nagyapo na tsurba, and that could still commit rape. Alright? These are just few of the commentaries made by people out of the Christine Dacera incident. And it was shameful. Again, it is shameful. I'm sorry if I will be offending a lot of your beliefs, but that is really shameful on our part. As a society, what did we do wrong in order for us to come so low? Because what we are doing, assuming that Christine Dacera was really raped, was blaming the victim. We lost track of we lost track of pinning down the perpetrator. In fact, we were trying to come up with theories that Christine Dacera was, at the end of the day, was the one who really was to be blamed of. And that is what just happened, is what we call as rape culture. And rape culture could result into victim blaming mentality. But I do not want to judge you and say, I'm so good at this. I do not blame the victim as well. No. I refuse to be treated as that way. But let me try. I will try to explain. How did we come up with such mentality? Why do we have that mentality? Why is it that when we hear of rape, we automatically ask ourselves, kinsa na siya ng bae? Yata na siya? Daghan daw kay nag-uyab. And all those questions, quote and quote in Visayan language, dialect. Victim blaming mentality is out of the theory of the hypothesis called just world hypothesis, or another word is fair world hypothesis, or the belief that the world is inherently fair, that the world is inherently rational. Now, if the world, this thinking tells us that if the world is fair, you get what you deserve. If you work hard, you will get good things. If you are a good person, you will have good karma. And I think that every one of us have that mentality. Okay? So if the world is fair, you get what you deserve. If you work hard, you get rich. You get good things. And those who subscribe, those who have this belief, think that unfortunate events happens to a person that is incompetent or fails to do a particular good thing. Okay? So if we think that the world is fair, if we think that the world is if we think that the world is just and rational, and then something happens to a particular person, we automatically say, that's because he did something wrong. That happened to her because she did something wrong. That's our mentality. And when you hear someone has been raped, it challenges your belief that it challenges your belief of a just, fair world. And it causes you discomfort and stress. Murag, if a personal belief is challenged, it creates a discomfort in you. Why is my belief being challenged? I wholeheartedly believe that this is true. And I believe that the world is fair, that the world gives good things to good people, and something so horrible as rape happens to a person, so that person must have done really something bad in her life to have suffered rape. That's the mentality, because we do not want to confront difficult truth. We do not want to confront when the conversation is already difficult, when it already touches our beliefs. It's so difficult to touch your moral beliefs because you've grown out of that. That's your standard. And then all of a sudden, you're being challenged. Okay? So, people would then just resort to blaming the victim to reduce the discomfort from an idea that conflicts with their belief. So instead of checking into whether or not my belief is actually correct, whether or not checking if my belief is in 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 is whether or not my belief is whether or not my belief coincides with the reality, we do not do that. Instead, we just blame victims. Because it's comfortable. Because it's easier. I don't wanna change my belief. I'm just gonna blame you. You might have something done. You might have done something wrong to have suffered that. That is why you make excuses out of yourself. She must be flirt. She must be wearing miniskirts. She must be drunk. That's how we say it. Okay? So we reduce the discomfort from an idea that conflicts with our belief that won't happen to me because I know better. I know how to avoid it. That's how we are. And then we are comfortable. We go on with our lives. And then we forget that there's actually a victim. There's someone who has been abused. Why? Why do we still blame her? Even if horrible, horrendous crime has been committed against her. Victim blaming is more prevalent in rape crimes than others. This is due to the dominant narratives on sexuality that male as a sexual aggressors and female as the sexual gatekeepers. Okay? So the male can just freely be a male, okay? And a female is supposed to be submissive. Even if it was not made with her consent. Even if it was made out of force, fraud, intimidation. That is still to be blamed. Victim is still to be blamed. Rape is a deviant event. It's something out of the ordinary. It's unusual. And it anchors on the idea that the perpetrator is monstrous, some monster. And that in our society we believe that it is the role of women to avoid them. How difficult it is to be a woman in a society where they believe that rape is a deviant event. So I will not expect you to instantly change your belief and instantly say, okay, the next time I hear about rape, I will no longer look into the circumstances of the victim. Instead, I will look into the elements of rape. I will not expect you to do that instantly. This is a work in progress. We move by progress. We move by patterns. We move by simple, small steps. But we can start today. We can start by educating ourselves. That rape is not all about girls wearing miniskirts or girls getting drunk. Because no matter how drunk the woman is, you do not have the right to do something to her that is out of your consent, that is out of your authority. You can't force someone to do something and say that's her fault. Okay? On to my next slide. In Philippines, we have three prevalent victim blaming scheme. So, quote unquote, it wasn't really rape. This pertains to the denial that sexual violence happens, even in marriages, romantic relationships, or sexual relationships. So, let me just insert here the fact that even if you're married, there can be marital rape. And the Supreme Court has already decided on that matter. So long as there was no, it was done through force, threat, intimidation, or the offended party is unconscious, deprived of reason, there can still be rape. Of course, there's forgiveness clause, wherein if a girl has been raped and she marries the perpetrator, the criminal liability is extinguished. And you may say, what? We have that? Yes. That's how outdated our law is. If the victim marries the perpetrator, it's the end of the story. And that puts the woman into more danger as she exposes herself more into the man. So when you try to digest all of this, please include the fact that woman is not an object. Woman is not a sexual object wherein if the husband wants to have sex, he can just, hey, pull his wife and have sex. We're not objects. We're human beings. We have brains, we have heart. We can think for ourselves. So men cannot just treat us as sexual object and say, I want sex, give that to me. They cannot do that. So as you try to digest all of this information, please include the fact that women are not sexual objects. That if your need for sex arises, you immediately just grab a woman. We're not objects. You cannot just immediately drag us anywhere, anytime. That's not how case should be. The next prevalent domain is that she asked for it. So this one holds the survivors accountable for putting themselves in a vulnerable position, which outright counters the essential point of rape, the absence of consent. Okay? Rape is a deviant event, anchors on the idea that a perpetrator is monstrous, and unfortunately, this scheme, I cannot. It is the role of the women to avoid them. So, it disregards the fact that rape happens very often with people who know each other at home, in the family, and in relationships. In fact, when I check the statistics, the highest number of rape incidents during the COVID-19 lockdown, specifically in the month of March to April, is incest rape. Father, brother, uncle having sexual intercourse with the daughter, the granddaughter, the niece. These are incestuous rape. And it happens in the Philippines. You may say, oh, that's not happening. I have not heard of that. No. Statistics would show that Philippines is one of the leading countries with incestuous rape. How unfortunate is that? And how traumatizing it could have been for a child to hear the footsteps of his father forwarding towards her room. And the child only knows what will happen. So it happens. And these things are horrible. You will agree to that. But please, check into your biases. Check your judgments. Check your beliefs. Check your bias. And if you cross a particular thing about rape, think of this conversation. On to my next slide. Let me just highlight the need for, no, let me just discuss here the legal loopholes. Okay, so the number one challenge with rape scenario is that victim blaming and rape culture. Like, we blame the victim, we pin the blame to the victim, and then we forget about the perpetrator. That's victim blaming. But our laws also have failed us. Okay? If you notice, in my previous discussion with the life of Daisy, notice that I have been constantly repeating the word consent. In our law, consent is nowhere to be found. So, there's rape when there's force, threat, intimidation. There's rape when the offended party is deprived of reason. There's rape when you are unconscious. There's rape when there's fraud. There's rape when a victim is 12 years old or below. That's it. However, in reality, it's very difficult to prove that there was really threat, or there was really intimidation, or there was really force. Because, for example, when you say there was force, he pinned me, he held me tight, he he tied my hands with rope. These things are done through force. And the judge, the court, the people, the society expects you in return to resist. So there has to be, if there's force, for example, there has to be resistance. You have to resist. Stop. I don't want this. But not all people are like that. Some people are just really afraid. And they would just freeze. They would froze, and then their brain would autopilot, and that's how they can protect themselves. That's it. You can't expect everyone to resist. All right? There might also be intimidation or threat. But in reality, it's very difficult to prove this, especially because of the line of questionings that are being asked and the bias that we have set in our mind even before hearing cases. So, on to my next slide, you will understand, we will try to understand that consent, there are no blurred lines in consent, and this should be included as an element of rape. Because it's difficult to prove that there's force, there's difficult to prove there's threat, there's difficult to prove intimidation, we might as well include element of consent. That as long as rape was done without the consent of the victim, then that's rape. Because in a lot of countries in Asia, in Europe, rape is just, the definition of rape there is just sexual intercourse without consent. As simple as that. We do not have to prove that there's force, that I was kicked, he was stronger than me, and all of that. Because not everybody gets the same reaction. So, one of the legal loopholes that we need to focus and we need to voice out is the consent should be highlighted in rape cases. Flirting is not consent for you to engage sexual intercourse with that woman. Drunk is not consent. Unconscious is not consent. Miniskirt is not consent. Past consent is not consent. Just because the woman feels like she wants to wear miniskirt, then that does not mean she wants to be raped and go through the traumatic experience of being raped. That's a very outdated mentality. Because if that's the case, then all the women going to the beaches wearing two-piece are inviting people to be raped, to get raped. Right? So stop with that mentality that if a woman is wearing sexy dress, then she's asking for rape. That's very wrong. You will be reprimanded by Miss Universe because everybody in that um, contest, in that pageant, is wearing two-piece, sexy, sexy clothes. And are they asking for rape? No. So, if it's difficult to prove force, threat, intimidation, and all other elements of rape, we might as well include consent. And this has been um, communicated to our legislators. Please include consent onto the law. On to my next slide, you will see here two words. Okay? I think that was not. All right. You will see here that only consent has a weight to make so sexual conduct legal. What does that mean? If there was consent, if the consent was freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement, okay, go ahead. Go ahead, conduct sexual intercourse. That's legal. Nobody's gonna ask you for that. But if the consent there was not freely given, it was not knowledgeable, meaning that the victim really do not know the consequences because she's demented, for example. So when the guy asked her, hey, can I have sex with you? And then she said, sige, sige, because she's demented. She's buang. Okay? So that's not knowledgeable. She is not aware of the consequences of her actions. Consent must also be an informed consent, meaning that she knows the person she's into. Remember Daisy and the fact that she was deceived by Carl, thinking that Carl was 32-year-old Harvard University graduate? At that time, that's her consent. That's consent. But was that an informed consent? No, because she was defrauded. It was the wrong kind of consent. She was defrauded into something, that is why she agreed to it. So that's not an informed consent. So that still not is consent. You see how important it is for us to include consent in the elements of rape, because it's not all the time that victims react similarly. So if it's consent, it's easy for the victim to say, I did not like that. Yes, we were girlfriend and boyfriend, but I do not want to engage into sexual intercourse with that guy. I do not want to be used as a sexual object. I did not give my consent to that. Then that's rape. That should be the case. On to my next slide. I'm sorry. Here. So it has to be freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement. So we have two words here: assent and acquiescence. Wherein assent is when there is agreement on the face of it, meaning that assent is not consent. So let me just give you an illustration. So Dr. Layson, he is a doctor for women in a volleyball team, and in a private educational institution. And he is pretending to be medically treating his patients when he would touch the private parts of his patients. So he would check the vagina if it's going well, because these women are athletes, okay? But the patients did not know that it was unnecessary. And the touching of the private parts by Dr. Layson is actually for his sexual pleasure. That there's this camera installed, and then he would check the vagina and he would like pinch that, believing that the patient believing that it was done out of medical profession. So in that scenario, his patient assented, agreed for him to do that because on its face, he was doing it for his medical profession. But they were not knowledgeable and informed. So, assent is an agreement, a consent on the face of it, by the looks of it, by the peripheral, by the surface look of it. Now, if you look at it at just a plain view, you will see that, oh, he was just checking his patients. Okay? So that is why the athletes agreed to it. However, it was not knowledgeable and informed consent because they did not really know what happened. Acquiescence, on the other hand, is when there is an agreement under duress or under threat, such as when I mentioned a while ago with Mr. Salvador, wherein he would threaten these celebrities, this model, to engage into sexual activity with him in exchange for something, for a career. So that's not consent, okay? Because there's something in exchange, and it was done. The woman agreed to it out of threat. So these things are not consent. So when you ask yourself, what really is consent? What really is giving permission for a person to do something like that to you? What really is consent, ma'am? Consent is when it is freely given, it is knowledgeable, and it is an informed agreement. Meaning that the woman was not deceived into something reason why she placed herself into that scenario. And we need consent in our laws. We need laws on sexual assault that can change our morality towards rape. The same way that laws did slavery laws. Because laws, ladies and gentlemen, shape our morality. When we know that a particular thing is being punished by law, we automatically instill in our brain, that's wrong because that's in law. All right? So that is why before slavery is legal. And sorry, slavery is legal, meaning everybody can just ask someone to be their slaves. But when laws were created, um, declaring that slavery is legal, then um, we see slavery now as morally shameful act because laws shape our morality. When something is wrong and it is put into law, we instantly say, that's wrong. A law was made saying that that act was wrong. Okay? So if this particular concern in consent is put into writing and is included in our laws, maybe hoping against hope that this would change as well our morality, our thinking that rape should be um, something that is blamed towards the victim. Okay? So that should be the case. On to my next slide. I will show to you. So what can we do? We have, let me just recap. We have already discussed the elements of the crime, that there is again rape if there's carnal knowledge, or in layman's term, sexual intercourse with a woman, by a man to a woman, and it was made through force, threat, or intimidation, and it was the offended party, and the offended party is deprived of reason, is unconscious. It is through force, threat, intimidation, or fraudulent machinations. That's rape. We have already discussed victim blaming and why it is so difficult for the victims to come out. I have already told you that the reason why we have victim blaming culture is because of our mentality that the world is fair. That if you do good, you will get good. And for those people who didn't get good, then they might have done something bad. And so we blame the victim. But that should not be the case because again, I told you that if we see rape as is, we have to look into the elements and the circumstances. So that's the first solution to the problem. We need for a shift of mindset. So we need to change our mindset. Is that easy? I'm sure it's not. But somewhere you have to start. And today is a good day to start. You understand by heart that rape is not because the woman wore miniskirts, or rape is not because the woman was being flirty. Rape is all about the elements provided by the law. Okay? Next is we redefine rape by focusing on lack of consent. On to my next slide. We see here that article, okay to, on to my next slide please. Redefining rape by focusing on lack of consent. So Article 266 of the Revised Penal Code, which punishes rape, requires the use of force, threat, intimidation, fraudulent machinations, or grave abuse of authority by the offender before an act can be considered rape. Absent these circumstances, it will be difficult for the victim to press charges or succeed in putting the accused behind bars. The experiences of other countries shed light on how to go about redefining crime of rape. In Great Britain, for example, the performance of sexual act other than those consented to by a person is cause for conviction of the crime of rape. So what is needed there is just lack of consent. In Sudanese Criminal Act, rape is a sexual intercourse without consent. So there is really a need to put into highlight the lack of consent. The Philippine Supreme Court, in fairness to the Philippine Supreme Court, they have also made progressive rulings relating to the concept of rape. And it repeatedly gives us the message that when there's rape, you stick to the elements. You do not check other material things. So the Supreme Court ruled that moral character of the victim is immaterial. So when you hear of rape, you do not ask whether or not the victim is a prostitute, for example, who just went home, and when she was not being a prostitute, she was raped. Okay. It also pronounced in several cases that the law does not impose burden on the rape victim to prove resistance because it is not, again, element of the rape. That the failure of a rape victim to offer tenacious resistance does not make her submission to the accused criminal acts voluntary. So ingon si Supreme Court, the Supreme Court said that even if there was force and there was failure to resist on the part of the victim, it can still be rape because we do not check resistance on the part of the victim. Okay? However, it is a little bit alarming because recently in 2017, the Supreme Court um, reversed its ruling and said that um, the established circumstances, if there is no resistance, could lead to the fact that it was a consensual rape. So there's this case decided by the Supreme Court which says that there was a woman, they agreed to, man and a woman, they agreed to go on a lover's date. So they traveled together a long way from their meeting place. And when they reached Rizal Avenue, they ate, they dated, they walked together to a motel. And then they checked into the motel. And without the complainant manifesting any resistance. So the Supreme Court said, that is rape. We did not see her resist. But we really do not know what happened inside the four corners of that room. And we also, the woman in this case even said that we were there only to sleep because um, we are just we are far away from our homes. I did not consent to the sexual intercourse. We were, yes, we were girlfriend boyfriend, but I did not consent to it. But the Supreme Court said no, because you do not have you did not manifest enough resistance. So you see, what if it was really rape? Okay, it is proposed then that acts of rape should be redefined, and we should highlight on the essential element of lack of consent on the part of the victim instead of requiring the use of force, threat, intimidation. The exertion of resistance by the victim must never be made a requirement by the courts in proving the cases of rape. Next solution or next proposal is that, on to my next slide, we need to raise the age of sexual consent. So in the Philippine setting, statutory rape refers to sexual relations involving a person below the legal age sexual consent. So it is punishable under the law precisely because persons of such ages are considered to be young, considered too young to intelligently decide for themselves. So this means that in Philippines, any sexual intercourse with a minor who has not reached the age of 12 is automatically regarded to have voluntarily engaged in sexual act. However, once a child reaches the exact age of 12, he or she is legally deemed to mature enough to give sexual consent to another person. And that's very sad. You remember the case of Rosario Baluyot, the little girl I mentioned at the beginning of this session. She died few weeks after the rape incident. The vibrator was found inside her vagina. It was embedded already in her tissues, in her muscles, in her blood. It is covered with blood and pus. It's horrible. And every living day, she was suffering from pain. Every living day, she would cry because that little girl is homeless. That little girl was living in the streets. And so we fail as a society to give her the justice that she deserves. A little girl 12 years old who failed to provide birth certificate and was assumed to be more than 12 years old was never given justice just because no birth certificates was provided, and therefore she was assumed to be legally mature enough to give sexual consent. But what? But was she really in her right mind to give sexual consent at the age of 12? The answer, of course, is no. But we do not have the laws yet. And since it was allegedly brought out to court that she'd never resisted because, of course, she was given in exchange 200 pesos, then that's not rape. But should we be a society like that? Do you wanna just sit back and say, that's the kind of society I live in? So instead of protecting the children, the law leaves them vulnerable to sexual predators, especially those who are significantly older than them or who may take advantage of their impressionability or of their minor thinking. It has been found also by studies that earlier initiation of sexual intercourse is strongly associated with sexually transmitted diseases. And imagine if we are to expose our children into the kind of environment that they live in. The Philippines has the lowest age of sexual consent in Southeast Asia. Other countries like Brunei, East Timor, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Taiwan peg the age of consent at 16. So it's 16. 16 below, when you have sexual intercourse with a child, automatic rape. And Vietnam, they set it at 13. But in the Philippines, we have it at 12. So all this considered, it is highly proposed that the legal age of sexual consent is to be raised because it is really set too low. Okay, so that's um, one of the proposals. Next is on to my next slide. We repeal. I personally believe that there is a need to repeal the forgiveness clause. Article 266 of the Revised Penal Code, as amended by Republic Act number 8353, provides that subsequent valid marriage between offender and the offended party shall extinguish, shall eliminate, shall erase the criminal action of rape or the penalty imposed. It further states that it is the legal husband who is the offender. The subsequent forgiveness by the wife as the offended party shall extinguish the criminal action of crime. So, a rapist's offer to marry the rape survivor should never be a reason to let them off lightly for various reasons. Number one, it allows the offenders to pressure rape survivors to reach compromise. I work in courts. I've been working with courts for almost 4 years now. And we deal with rape cases in our court, in my court specifically, at the regional trial court. And we deal with rape cases. And as much as we want to give justice to the rape victims, they would sometimes just fall into settling the case. In our case, my judge may have been very effective in dealing with this, but other factors such as that there's offer of money or there's offer to marry and there's a lot of things that the rape survivor would just let go. There's even one rape victim in our whose case is assigned in our court who said that I would just like to dismiss the case because I have been judged immensely by my churchmates and I could no longer take it. I want to go to a very far place and just live, restart my life. And if I have this case pending, I will have to repeatedly come here and tell you what happened. So she just dismissed the case. It's unfortunate, and it gives us the message that even if you commit horrendous, gruesome crime like rape, you may still get out of it scot free. Okay? So we should repeal the forgiveness clause. A rapist offer to marry the rape survivor should never be the reason to let them off lightly. With such provision in the law, women who have been raped by their husbands before or during marriage are likely to be raped again, trapping them in a vicious cycle of physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. The offender can coax or induce the wife, to condone the violation. Okay? So those are the things that we need to propose to move forward as we try to improve the rape scenario in our country. I guess that ends my presentation for this morning's conversation. I think this is my last slide. Is it, Ma'am El? I think this is my last slide. Let me just check. Yes, this is my last slide. All right. So, any questions? Or what shall we do after this, Ma'am El?
Thank you so much, Attorney, for that very enlightening topic that you have shared to us and together to the CU community. So for the questions or like our open forum, no, let's start our open forum. So everyone are welcome to leave their questions or clarifications in our comment box with the Facebook Live and YouTube Live that we have shared. So feel free to chat on and comment your questions so that we can address that one. And together with us, aside from Attorney Lagcao, who will be answering all your clarifications now, especially if we go with the technicalities of our topic, we also have our college team with our faculties. No, let's start with our very own dean, Miss Mary Claudette L. Bacas. So she is with us just in case there might be questions that is addressed specifically to the profession of criminology. So um, she might be able to provide us some inputs about the said question or clarification. Aside from that, we also have Miss Charel Ann Ponce, one of our faculty as well. Together with us is Miss Rina Jean Pagon and Mr. Mark Steven Tagapulot. So I introduce you the faculty that comprises our sorry, our one of our part-timers, Miss Julianne Villegas, who is with us as well in the meeting. So for questions and clarifications, again, feel free to comment down to our Facebook Live and YouTube channel. So first, attorney, we have a question from our Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Amor Curie Torres. So her question is, what can we do to update our law on rape?
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that question. There is currently there are a lot of movements coming from, most specifically from women's group, um, um, communicating with the legislators, the Congress, to act on it. In fact, um, there is a pending bill that wants to amend our rape laws. But as to the question of how we can personally help in updating our laws on rape, we might as well communicate with women's group. We might communicate with NGOs and other groups that are specifically focused on this, because these are the groups that have direct access to our legislators, to our representatives, who will then make the necessary bill that could hopefully amend the rape. So it's best to communicate, partner with non-governmental organizations, women group. And I personally commend Capital University and Dean Bacas of Criminology Department for coming up with this forum, because this will surely, hopefully, I hope, this will send the message to across other organizations, across people. And the more that we make voice out of it, the more that we make sound out of it, then for sure, hopefully, we reach the legislators.
Okay, thank you so much for that one, attorney. So that really enlightens us again, on how we will be able to develop and to at least, make amends or amendments to our existing
Yes.
rape law. We have another question here from Mr. Mark Bacas. So in the aspect of law enforcement, what are the things that should be given into considerations when conducting investigation on rape cases? Just a refresher.
Thank you very much. The police investigators play a very vital role in prosecuting rape cases. In fact, the very beginning of instituting a criminal action for rape starts with the police officers or investigating officers. So for me, and we have wide audience with criminology students, and this is very helpful to you as well. So please listen. There is need for you to listen. That's just the word. You listen to the victim, you take note of it. You do not put your own biases. Please set aside your biases. Please set aside your prejudices. Listen to the victim. Try to look it into the victim's eyes. Also, sometimes when the rape victim comes out and they go to a police officer, they are not really that prepared. They are having second thoughts. They have a lot of thoughts going on into their minds. So please make it comfortable. So I think that as to what the law enforcement can do, maybe we should conduct trainings and seminars for law enforcers as well, as to how to properly deal with sensitivity these cases, because it's a reality that most of the law enforcers are, or police officers are, male, and it's a little bit difficult to send out a message to opposite sex, especially if rape, as sensitive as rape. So the question as to how, what are the things that should be taken into consideration in investigating the rape cases? Number one, we look into first the elements of the crime. If the elements has been checked off, is it complete, and whether or not it's true. So the police officers have enough training into checking whether or not these allegations are correct. But I am personally appealing that when you perform the investigation, please set aside your biases, because it's not your rights that are being put into it's not your rights that are put into at stake. It's the right of the victims. That will be all.
Okay.
In addition, Ma'am El, can I add to the
Yes,
question?
Dean.
Yes po, Ma'am Dean.
Okay. Actually, the question is at the same time very hard and very easy to answer
Yes.
because with respect to investigation, there are really lot of things to be considered, especially if the case is rape. However, on the investigation aspect, we also have to consider that in the rape case, the number one thing that we should consider, one of the most important element or essential things in the case rape is time, wherein we always say that if a woman has been raped, uh, she should really be educated that time is of the essence because in rape cases, most of the evidence are bodily fluid, wherein they can easily be erased in the body of the victim. And those evidences are essential into the part of law enforcement, specifically on investigation. So I would like to tell our viewers that we have to educate everybody, especially our women, that the most essential thing when somebody has been raped is to always consider time. Okay, we always have to consider time as much as possible. We will advise the victim not to take a bath because the body of the victim herself is actually very important on the investigation aspect. And there are also top three things that we should consider, especially if we're talking with crime scene. What are those? There are, first is the crime scene itself, where the crime rape has been committed. Second is the body of the perpetrator. And lastly, the body itself of the victim. So those three things should be taken into consideration if we're talking with investigation. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much for that one, Ma'am Dean. That was really a good call this one enlightenment now for those students, criminology students to be specific, who are with us and joining with these webinars, so that they be able to have an overview on how our investigator really handles rape cases. Any addition coming from the other faculties? Any addition po before we move on with another question? Okay, so let's now move with another question. Comes from Eldon Cultura. So his question goes like this: does victim blaming mentality po an excuse in the contributory factors of the victims in consummating any act of rape?
Wait, I will try to understand the question. Does victim blaming mentality an excuse in the contributory factors of the victims in consummating any act of rape? Does the victim mentality? All right, let me just take it like this. Victim blaming should not be a contributory factor at all. So it should not be an excuse. It should not be an element that he did that because there's this victim blaming mentality, and I cannot hold him responsible because we're just people. We're in a society with victim blaming mentality. So that's it. So at all times, victim blaming mentality should not be considered as a contributory factor. It's immaterial and it should be stopped. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much for that
In
one,
addition as well,
attorney. Any
attorney,
addition po?
yes, in addition as well,
Yes
we
po,
have
Ma'am
this
Dean.
what we call post-rape trauma syndrome.
Yes.
Diba? We have this
Yes.
post-rape trauma syndrome, wherein
Yes.
most of the times victims of rape actually encounters this syndrome, and sometimes the effect, actually not sometimes, but most of the times the effect of this syndrome is negative into the part of the victim. So basically, they go into isolation,
Yes.
and most of the times they will also blame themselves in becoming a victim.
Yes.
So
Very true.
it really takes time for the part of the victim to come out and eventually realize that a crime has been committed against her.
Mhm.
So sometimes we also have to really consider that one, especially on the investigation aspect.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much po, Attorney and Ma'am Dean, for answering the question of Elton Cultura. Just would like to flash out the comment of Dr. Amor for her question about her question earlier. So just would like to extend her gratitude and asking if Attorney Lagkaw could help them formulate the said request po, since she
Oh,
has
oh,
these two organizations who are willing to help her with this kind of request.
I am very much willing, ma'am. Very much willing. We can work hand in hand with these organizations and come up with a proposal, and then we can send them to our own representative, district representative. Yes, yes, for sure.
Thank you so much, Attorney. Any more questions? Comment down below sa ato ang Facebook Live and YouTube Live. How about with the other faculties po? Do you have any question in mind that you would like to raise for just like a clarification about what we had talked about rape and any other matters about the discussion of Attorney Lagkaw po?
Wala ma'am.
Yes, sir,
Uh,
Tagapulot.
I have no questions. I think everything was discussed by Attorney Lagkaw.
Okay, sir. Thank you. How about Ma'am Charal Ann po? Do you have any questions po?
Okay, good morning, attorney.
Good morning,
I
Ma'am
would like
Cha.
just I would like just to ask attorney if what are those contributing factors that might help the women to be away from this type of cases such as rape, sexual assault, or any other sim related cases.
As much as we want to protect women from these perpetrators, and as much as we want to provide them bulletproof solutions as to keeping ourselves away from these perpetrators are really everywhere. Like, they can be within your household, they can just be around the corner, they can just be your neighbor, they can just be your uncle, your father. These perpetrators are everywhere. So what can we do to protect ourselves? Unfortunately, I'll have to say that we need to be careful. We just need to take care of ourselves and to be mindful of our environment. Although I do not want to suggest that we limit ourselves, because that should not be the case. We are co-equals occupying this world, and we should live equally, enjoy the world equally. But there are those perpetrators surrounding us. I personally just take good care of myself and be very mindful of my environment. How about Dean? How can
Thank you,
you,
attorney.
Dean?
Actually, it's a hard question because if
Yes,
we go with routine activity theory, there are a lot of things that you should consider. First is the lack of guardian is really one of the things that
yes,
should take into place, because say for example if a young woman is alone in the street, so that's it. One is lack of guardian, and then if we have a motivated offender, that's really the big picture. If a man is really aggressive to commit the rape, and there is a suitable victim. If you are really a woman, actually rape is not just only suitable for women but also for male as well. So we cannot really go away with the reality that everybody is susceptible to the crime rape. So it's just a matter of protecting oneself, and awareness is really the key to
Awareness, yes.
survive.
Okay, thank you so much, Attorney and Ma'am Dean. Was your question po, Ma'am Cha, was addressed?
Yes, thank you, attorney. Thank you,
Thank
Dean.
you, ma'am.
Okay. I think there's no other questions has been laid out in the comment section po. Let me just refresh in here for a while. Okay. There's a new question from CJ. I think this is Prof. Ronido po from ICTS. Her question is, good morning. Is there such a thing as verbal rape, or is rape could also be manifested verbally?
Uh, I think the word there is oral rape. Like when we do it through the mouth. Yes, there is. Like when we insert, for example, the penis to the mouth of someone, then that's oral rape, or any object for that matter. So that is already addressed with the definition of rape under rape by sexual assault. But if it means verbal rape, like just verbal words being thrown at you, there is none. But if you have been like, if you feel like you've been attacked sexually through words, then there could be an no. There is no, ma'am. There is none. There can be no verbal rape, but there are other corresponding crimes that you may file against that person. Like for example, you may file acts of lasciviousness. Is being I don't know the word. Is being um rude and sexually rude, for example. Or if it will not fall under the elements of acts of lasciviousness, you may file a case for unjust vexation. But as of the moment, we do not have verbal conversation. I'm sorry, verbal rape. Thank you, ma'am.
And I think, attorney,
Okay,
it can
thank you
also
so much.
fall into trafficking in person.
Yes.
And that
yes.
will be discussed thoroughly by
Yes.
next Saturday.
Yes.
We're
Which is
in
our next topic.
sexual offense can be done to a person verbally. That will be the
Yes.
next topic next Saturday.
Yes, yes.
Yes po. Thank you so much, Attorney. I hope the question of Mom CJ has been addressed very well. And for the next question, we have Maria Asuncion Falardo. Her question is, mag-ask lang ko if nahitabo ang rape like 10 years ago, pwede pa po ba makafile og case ang victim?
There is what we call as prescription period in rape cases. In the Philippines, let me just to make it sure. In the Philippines, those punishable by correctional penalty shall prescribe in 10 years, with the exception of those what do you call that one? With the exception of those punishable by arresto mayor. But in cases of ay wala. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes po, Attorney, we can still hear you po. Na wala lang imong kampo.
Wait. Where is my... I'm trying to fix my camera, ha? Wait lang yun. Can you hear me?
Yes po, Attorney.
Can you see me now?
And we can now see you po. Yes po.
Alright. Okay. So if question, if the rape is committed like 10 years ago, yes, you can still, because the prescription period for crimes that is punishable by reclusion perpetua is prescribed by in 20 years. So that is still within the prescribed period.
Okay, so thank you so much, attorney. Would you like to enlighten them more about what prescription really means is, so that they can
Oh,
have like
pres-
yes, yes po. Go on.
yes. Prescription period is those periods set in our laws wherein from the time that a crime has been committed and from the time that it was discovered, for example, like if it's uh murder, for example. So of course there's no one who can report it, not unless the body has been found. So there's an in place prescription period for every crimes committed. And in crimes that is punishable by reclusion perpetua, the prescription period is 20 years. So from the time na nakomit ang offense up to the time that you reported the incident and you instituted a criminal action, that's the period that will be counted. And if it's less than 20 years, then you may still file it. Of course, if it's a lower penalty, reclusion temporal, it will have a lower prescription period, like 10 years, 5 years, and the list goes on as the penalty lowers down.
Okay, thank you so much for that additional information po, attorney. Let's now move with another question from Maimi from our Facebook Live. What can you advise po to end the culture of silence among other rape victims?
Uh, it's so easy for me to say that do not be afraid. Or it's so easy for me to say that come out and be strong and protect your rights. But it in reality, that's not the case. It's really difficult. So instead of maybe advising how a rape victim should come out, maybe we should focus on the system that they work with. So I personally, I am working in court, and my presiding judge is a woman as well, and we are same in set goals with looking rape victims in through their eyes. So we try to look the situation into their shoes, like that. But as to how I can advise that to end the culture of silence among the rape victims, maybe we should strengthen moral support from family, support from friends, and we make ourselves available to our friends, to our family. You ask your friend, you ask your family member, are you okay? How are you doing? You seem silent these days, because these are manifestations that something really horrible happened. You try to check on your friends, on your loved ones. Maybe we can at least contribute in ending the culture of silence among rape victims.
Okay, thank you so much, attorney. So I hope that everyone have this brevity in themselves, no, in protecting and of course manifesting our rights that has been given to us by our institution. Okay, I think we're all good with the questions since there's no new comments naman has been posted in our Facebook Live and YouTube. So just in behalf of the College of Criminology, Capital University, and in connection with our 50th founding anniversary, celebration of Capital University, and for celebrating as well our Women's Month, we'd like to extend our gratitude for enlightening us at how high rape cases has been as we face the crisis during the COVID-19. And it is also really timely for us to educate the community as to how rape is being committed and how can we protect our victims. So Thank you so much, Attorney Lagcao. But this is not the end yet for our program, since we still have another Saturday this coming 27, and we will be talking about trafficking in person. So this is just a continuation of our topic today. So for everybody, the community of Capital University, let's be a voice for ourselves and for others, and let our voice be heard um, by knowing our rights, and how can we be protected by our laws, for we are bounded by the maxim ignorantia lihes nomini excusat, or ignorance of the law excuses no one. So thank you so much, and don't leave the stream yet, since we will be announcing our competition, or for the poster slogan competition. So thank you so much, attorney and other faculty of the criminology po. Thank you. So can we share the slide for our poster slogan?
Wait, please announce the winner of the pastel as well.
Ah, yes po. Yes po, attorney.
Ay, na.
Okay, so as requested by Attorney Lagcao, we'll just have to announce the winners of our quick game earlier. So for the first question, who answers, forgot the forgot to answer actually, but that was JD Dahao. So I identified him as one of our student actually, and we have another winner, CZ Rizalin Hibulan, and lastly is Raquel Bernasor Lapad. So we will be sending you a private message on how you'll be able to claim your reward, or like your, yeah, the call this one, your award. Okay. So next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so as what I have mentioned earlier, we will be having our poster slogan making contest. So the entry, I mean the start of sending out your entries for the said contest will start immediately today, or effectively today, up until the last day of our webinar session, which will be on the 27th of March. So the guidelines and criteria, for a while lang po ha. Okay, so as what I have mentioned earlier, we will be conducting our poster making slogan. Can you move with the first slide muna? Okay. Poster making contest. So submission of entries will start today, March 20 to 27, 2021. And criteria for, okay, next slide. Mechanics for the said competition will be the following. So it will be open to all bona fide student of Capital University and should have registered using the provided link for the webinar workshop. So as what you have seen on the screen earlier. And entries should be in maximum of 3 per college and from senior high department, regardless of track. So the entries, we are actually able to produce an entry form for that. And we will be sharing that entry form to the different colleges of Capital University within the day. So make sure to coordinate with your deans and heads of the college if you are willing and you're interested to join the said competition. Next, then we have here the, oh, can't be seen. We have here the materials to be used. It's not seen lagi, no? There's a text manggod beside it sana. But again, sorry for the presentation. It's not visible in there, but it actually mentions in there or written in the text is that materials that you need to use is a 1/4 illustration board, and you should be using a coloring material like a pastel or a crayon, simple crayons. And you should avoid using digital printed materials to beautify your artwork. And deadline for submission will be this March 27, 2021 at exactly 12 noon. So to those who are not in within the city, you can have, I mean, again, coordinate with your deans and heads of the college if what could be the possible, what could be the possible solution or like remedy that you can make use in order for you to join the said competition. And announcing for the winners of our competition would be on March 31, 2021 at 5 p.m. So how will you be able to win the said competition? So we have here criteria for judging. So we divide our 100% into two category. First is we call it e-votes or electronic votes. So it comes from, or you will be getting the 50% of your total points from reacting hearts and sharing on the entries posted on our official Facebook page, which is CU Criminology Purple Warriors. Again, reminder, the shares and heart reactions will only be counted to those shares that has been indicated in our official Facebook page. We will still be sharing this one to our Capital University Facebook page and other affiliated college official pages, but we only count shares and number of reacts to our official Facebook page. So 50% e-votes will be calculated based on the 20% of the total heart reacts and will be added to the 30% from the total number of shared posts from our official Facebook page. As you can see on the diagram below, that's 20% heart reacts plus 30% shared numbers of shares equals to 50% total e-votes. Then the remaining 50% will be comes from our panel votes. So we have a set of judge, no, um, to grade or to provide some scores or to give scores based on your outwork. So we get 25% from the content. So you should show relevancy on the discussed topic during the webinar. So it should depict what really the message is all about during the webinar session. And we have creativity for 15%, should highlight ideas that are extraordinary, and originality, which is 10%, and should showcase personal touch of the work. So it should not be a copyrighted or like an idea comes from a legit artist or legit painter that you just copied and you'll just have to or you just give out some minor touching of your own. It should be 100% original, though it's just 10% of the 50 total of the 50%. All right, so 50% panel votes will be calculated based on the content, creativity, and originality. So next slide. So for that, total criteria for judging, 50% electronic votes and 50% panel votes. Okay, slide. So thank you so much again for listening and joining with us with our first day of our webinar. And I hope that you were able to get the gist out of the topic that we have just laid out. So stay tuned since we will still be having our second day webinar this coming 27, and we will be talking about trafficking in person. Thank you and bye for now.
And